Okay. Welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of Thursday, February 19th, 2015. The time is 5:10 p.m. May we have roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Garpetian is absent. Commissioner Morgan?
Here.
Commissioner Shire?
Here.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Here.
And Commissioner Vidor?
Here.
Thank you for presence. One absent.
Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda is report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on or before Monday, February 16th, 2014.
15, sorry. Typo there.
On or before February 15th, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. 3 is approval of the minutes. Do we have any of approval of the minutes of December 18th, 2014? Do we have any comments or changes? Yes, Commissioner Morgan.
Yes. Since I am the vice chairperson, they put Commissioner Garpetian, but it should be Commissioner Morgan.
Oh.
My one claim to fame, so I might as well go for it.
Go for it.
Absolutely.
But now we got to repeat it and
What's
remember.
that?
Yes, totally.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay. One change.
Any other changes? No. Do you have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
Okay, thank
May we
you.
have roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Vidor?
Yes.
Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Madam Chair Vartanian?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion approved
Thank you.
for minutes.
Number 4 is oral communications, and having none, we'll skip to number 5, comments from commissioners. Comments, anyone?
I do.
Commissioner Morgan?
This week, on Sunday, February 22nd, 2015, which is this Sunday, Montrose turns 102 years old. It was on Washington's birthday in 1913 that the subdivision of present-day Montrose began. Developer J. Frank Walters, in association with local real estate partner Robert Walton, auctioned off 300 acres of land with a catered barbecue at approximately the corner of what today is Verdugo Boulevard and Clifton Place, near the site of the local mobile station today. Celebrate with us as we bring you al fresco dining with an authentic rancho-style barbecue accompanied by beer and sangria available presented by Zeke Smokehouse. Live music included for the first time by the Mariachi Trio Capri, and history exhibits from the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley, Friends of Rock Haven, and the Montrose Public Library. Gather around the stage in front of Billy's Board Shop to enjoy performances by the Prom Plus Kids and Revolution Dance Center. A history walk hosted by Robert Newcomb will offer a walking tour filled with wonderful insights into the Montrose of bygone days. At 2 p.m., join us at the stage as we honor some of the folks in our community who have helped make Montrose what it is today. Mayor Zari Zananian will be there to kick off the ceremonies. Afterwards, stick around as we sing, then this is the best part, happy 102nd birthday to Montrose, and serve free birthday cake to everyone in town. So I encourage you all to come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to being there.
That's a great event.
Have extra flyers. Okay, well, I have it in my notes. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Comments? No. I just wanted to make a quick comment. Although I was unfortunately unable to attend our December meeting, I did watch the tape. And during the discussion of the process for review at the counter, Jay, you were talking about how, the various types of requests and situations that come up on a daily basis, and it's a busy counter, and, there are lots of different things happening. I was just wondering, it's a thought, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about it. I know the City Council just recently enacted sort of a program where they're going to be visiting different departments and getting sort of an overview of, what happens at ground zero. And maybe I shouldn't use that term, but I think they recently had a GWP Grayson plant meeting.
Right.
And I think they might be doing ride-alongs with the police department. I personally, and I don't know how you all feel, would be more than happy to spend a couple of hours or a half a day behind the planning counter with staff just to get a sense for what really happens. Is that something we like shadowing? Just like
Seems like masochism, but I'd have to look into that. It's an interesting possibility. When we're doing presentation, council is going to come to community development as part of their kind of looking around the various city agencies. They're not going to be doing it that focused and that intensely. They're kind of getting a bigger overview. But I think it's a possibility, so we could check into it and see if that was a voluntary opportunity for you. So.
And I don't necessarily mean as a full committee.
That would be strange.
Individual,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Right? Yeah. I don't want to intimidate anybody.
Yeah, I see the upside for you, but I also see some of you have been in front of the counter, obviously, so you've been through this. We'd have to see it because we also want to make sure we have as comfortable an interaction with applicants as possible. And so if staff felt that a commissioner or board member was kind of hovering over them, it might kind of have an impact, but we'll definitely run it up the chain.
No,
and see.
absolutely, just a thought, and we
Have any
wouldn't want
thoughts,
to
Alan?
intimidate anybody.
Well, I was thinking that perhaps the other two commissions that the Community Development Department staffs, the Planning Commission, Design Review Board might also have an interest in having that opportunity. So maybe we can discuss with the director possibility of doing some sort of open house tour on behalf of all the commissions or some sort of staggered way so we don't run into Brown Act having to notice it and then have everybody from the public also wander trips through the office. But we'll talk to the director about it.
Unless I misunderstood, you want to be at the counter as we're interacting with
That was the
customers.
thought. I mean, I think that would provide, the most benefit in terms of just getting a sense for, what really goes on a daily basis, because I'm sure it's a lot, and just get a better sense of the different types of scenarios and the types of questions people are asking or what their issues are, just to get a feel for what's happening on
Maybe
the
we can
front line.
Run that idea and then Alan's idea and see where it takes us. So I'll bring that back to you next month.
Okay.
Well, agenda is that as just a follow up.
Right. And then if you have any other thoughts for, I don't know, getting us a little more exposure.
Yeah, I think we can talk to the director and see what his comfort level is with it.
Great, thank
You
you.
could always fake a project at your own property and crew pay the fees and then you get experience.
Hey, you're just sitting at the permit center and watching other people go through the process is probably pretty educational too.
Yeah, no, I think it would be
Being a fly
quite
on
an
the wall, as it were, on
education.
the other side of the counter.
Okay. Number 6 on the agenda is old business, and having none, we'll move to number 7, new business. And I think, Jay, you might want to talk to us about some changes?
Yeah, we have a few changes for the agenda. Item 7A at the applicant's request is being moved to April 14th. They're doing some additional research. Our initial staff recommendation was recommending denial for Glendale Register. They're doing some additional research, and they'll bring that back to us, and then we'll fold it into the report that you've already looked at, and then we'll hear the case on the 16th. That's item 7A. Item 7B is also, for a different reason, being held over. This is a case where an applicant has reconsidered one of the Mills Act conditions that was imposed quite some time ago. And I gave her the opportunity to come to the commission to make her case for that. Unfortunately, work has gotten in the way tonight, so she wasn't able to be here. Because this has so long after the fact of when this was due, this is really our longest extension, and this has taken us beyond the typical grace period that we offer people when we know they're working in good faith on a project and things may come up. So I've given her 2 potential options. One would be to just do the work and complete it by, I can't remember, May 31st, 3 months basically. The other would be to schedule her for the next hearing in March, but maintain that due date for the work to be done. So if she were to just go ahead and do the work that was originally conditioned in the Mills Act, she has 3 months to complete it. If not, it would be 2 months based on your views. And possibly you might withdraw the conditions. So that's another thing that she's considering. So
Those conditions are written up in the contract, correct?
yes. Mm-hmm.
But we can withdraw and change contracts?
I think we could, yeah. It could be an addendum that would have to be recorded with the county. In general, the conditions are kind of a strange aspect of the contracts because they have a kind of a temporary nature where the contract has a lifetime nature. Anyone who purchases a property with a contract and they see, oh, what are these conditions all about? We keep our records, so they would come back to the city and say, oh, I see this on my contract, and we'd say those are fulfilled. We haven't historically changed any of the contracts, and I think the city attorney's office is okay with that. So in this case, if we did alter it during the course of the ownership that entered into the agreement, we would talk to city attorney and see what to do, but we might have to amend it. So those are two changes to the agenda.
Excuse me.
Should I move on to item 7C?
Sure, I'll just read it into the record. 7C is amendment to GMC 15.20.060, procedure for designation or deletion of historic resources.
So this is something that the Community Development Planning Division does regularly, which is look at the municipal code and make adjustments, corrections, tweaks, cleanup. We call it cleanups. And this falls into the category of the cleanups that we are bringing to City Council relatively soon. This went to the Planning Commission last night. They have purview over Title 30, which is the zoning code. The Planning Commission does not have purview over Title 15, and Title 15 includes the Historic Preservation Ordinance. The Historic Preservation Ordinance includes the process for the Glendale Register, how we designate what we're supposed to do, what happens after a property is designated. And one thing that staff has noticed for years, not before my time and then through my time, is that the process of notifying residents within 300 feet, we used to do, now we do a 500-foot radius for Glendale Register Mills Act nomination, doesn't increase public participation, we've discovered, because we don't have people coming out for these. But what it does do is increase staff time, a small amount of city cost, because we take the cost of the mailing into the city budget, because we don't want to create a disincentive for people filing Glendale Register nominations and then hitting them up for postage. And then we also field calls from people, like the notice that we send out is very clear that this does not affect your property. It's being sent out for information only. And then we get the calls like, I got a notice from the city and, what's this all about? So it just kind of eats up a little bit of time. The one reason we're comfortable doing this, it's not like we don't believe in transparency and openness, but by notifying just a 500-foot radius for a process that really has no direct impact. It's really between the city and the owner if you're on the Glendale Register or if you receive a Mills Act contract. The person who lives within a 500-foot radius is no more likely to have an interest in that than someone who lives at 501 feet outside the property line. So we feel that our policy, which is a standard policy we have of letting the Historical Society know about they receive every agenda, they receive every packet that you receive, and they typically have a policy of not commenting on Glendale Register nominations, but I don't want to speak for them, and that could change in the future, but they are always notified of the hearing items. So for these reasons, as the reason that we don't think it's effective, and it may even be, where do we stop if we thought who could have interest in this? And then there's the other idea that even if someone came in and said, I don't think my neighbor should receive the Glendale Register designation in the Mills Act, your job is hearing from the public for whatever reason, and someone may come in and say, oh, I have information or something like that. Again, that's not necessarily someone who would happen to be 500 feet within the radius, but ultimately the commission's job is to assess a nomination against the criteria and determine whether it meets the criteria. And so I think that's another reason to consider this. One thing that was brought up at planning last night at the Planning Commission was what about in commercial property situations? We have two proposals for new work immediately to the north and to the south of the Alex Theater. And we've been working with these applicants to kind of protect the scale of the forecourt and thinking about that. That's an informal process that we're using our kind of design review authorization to ensure compatibility with adjacent structures. And that's kind of the mechanism that we'll always have available to work on projects next to designated resources. And so I think we're covered there. I think the basic city policies allow us the latitude to make decisions that incorporate aspects of the historic character of places, sheerly by the fact that that's what's there and that's what we're trying to protect in terms of context. So we want to bring this to the commission. We don't. Well, you will vote on this as a recommendation to City Council. So your decision. You're an advisory body on this issue. So if you have any questions or if you want to
Well, I
discuss.
do. Just one question, like the Valley Vista property. If they're not...
Valley View?
The Valley View property, right? So they put up a sign, let the neighbors know. And it said the stuff is still going to the Glendale Historical Society, but they weren't basically, they had their own agenda for that piece of property.
And this is different. That's in a historic district.
Right.
So historic district noticing is going to be exactly as it always has
would always
been.
be
We're
the
not
same.
changing
Okay.
anything for this. Is only for Glendale Register and Mills Act applications. The other issue is that was also a new construction. And so new construction we always notice through, we put up a big 3-foot by 4-foot sign on the front lawn, we do the 500-foot mailing, plus we notify
That
the
wouldn't go
homeowners.
away then?
No.
Okay.
So this is a pretty limited case, so.
I see the logic in the recommendation and can support it.
So were we distinguishing between commercial and residential?
When we've talked about that in-house, we don't really think we
No.
can separate out classes. And when I think about the reality of the situation, you know, the Alex is what immediately comes to mind. And I think I'm very comfortable that our normal design review, where we really look at adjacencies and how projects could impact neighbors, that will cover that, plus those
Project
projects.
specific.
Yeah, and then those projects do get noticed in many situations unless they're exemptable, and it's less likely that we would exempt a project right immediately next to a historic resource. We'd probably just defer to kicking that up for public review. So I think at many levels we're covered here.
I'm interested in not so much the designation, but the deletion of historic resources. And in a historic district, you know, whether or not it's a landmark doesn't seem to be as relevant as whether or not it's a contributing structure or not, but there's an overarching level of control that sort of applies to everything. But I'm trying to envision how and why or in what circumstances a resource would be deleted from the register and what might need to be triggered there.
Funny that you mention that, because we're going to be bringing a deletion to you in the near future. This is a deletion of a property that was designated only last year in December. The owner, after going through the entire process through HPC and City Council, became very uncomfortable with the Mills Act condition that was applied to the property and has said that they will not follow through on that. The easiest and I think fairest solution here is just to remove that property from the register. So we're going to be bringing that to the commission and then to City Council ultimately, and we have a process for that set up in the ordinance. But again, that whether we notify the neighbor or not, it's kind of the same issue. Other situations where there are two ways to delete. An owner can request deletion, and that comes to the Preservation Commission. The Historical Society would be notified about that. Homeowners associations would be notified about that. And so there would be opportunity for public comment. Again, someone who lives next door or 6 doors down probably has no more interest in that than anyone else. So that would be one option, and then the other option is the city can remove a register property if, after a natural disaster, for example, if other conditions, there's a whole list in the ordinance of the situations where it would be possible to delete a register property from the list. So, it's pretty rare, and this is unusual, and with the property that I mentioned, at this point, it wouldn't be fair to try to cancel the Mills Act contract and put the 12.5% penalty on the owner. They decided shortly after they agreed to it and signed the contract. So we're just working it out, and we'll probably have it for you next month and then to City Council soon after.
Do you think, not to belabor the discussion, but it also brings up the question, which has nothing to do with this particular issue, and maybe it's something we need to talk about, as, the conditions are kind of defined and agreed upon real time in this meeting with the cameras rolling and everything, and, is that something that people in the spur of the moment, in the immediacy of the meeting, maybe need to think through things more carefully, or?
The commission could say, "Are you sure?"
Well, yeah,
is
we
that
could
your
do
final
that.
decision kind of
Or
thing.
bring it back.
This hasn't really been a problem so far. It's like,
Okay.
I think most people coming in expect this. Interestingly, we have a second property that was approved for designation, recommended for designation by the commission, that the owner is exploring other situations. So we didn't bring that to City Council, so it's not designated right now. And we withheld City Council waiting to see what direction they're going to move and whether we have to come back to HPC on that. So you heard 7 cases for designation last year. We only designated 5 of those properties. So we have these 2 that are kind of in different kinds of limbo right now.
Interesting. Okay, well, I also support the recommendation. It makes sense. So if we have a motion.
Yeah, I move to approve, or I should say recommend to City Council that we approve the recommendation to change GMC 15.20.060 for the noticing of designation or deletion of historic resources.
Second.
May we have roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Shire,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidor,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Madam Chair Vartanian.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and 7D is review of 2013-2014 CLG annual report.
Okay, this is the report that we submit to the State Historic Preservation Office every year. I believe last year we reviewed it after the fact, if I remember correctly. This is the first year that we were actually reviewing it before. It was actually due a little bit in December, but they gave us an extension to allow your review today, and then we'll submit it with whatever corrections or additions we have to make, hopefully tomorrow or early next week. So what I could do is kind of refresh your memory about what this is, basically, and we could walk through. There are a few sections where I think it's more likely you'll have comment than others. Some of it's very straightforward. And the thing to remember with this is the state has a strange year. So their year is October 1st to September 30th, which makes it kind of a weird thing with our Mills Act count versus our Glendale Register count. But we figured that out on our end. And this is a requirement of the Certified Local Government Program. So Glendale is an early member of the CLG community. CLG, I like that, the CLG community. So progressive we are. And we basically are eligible for state grants, which is federal money that's distributed by the state to the local CLGs. So municipalities that don't have the status aren't eligible for those grant monies, and we've over the years received a number of CLG grants, including for our historic context, which is our most recent grant that we did for South Glendale. So it's important that we do this. It's important that we do it right. So far, we get limited feedback from SHPO when they review this, so that suggests that everything's moving in a good direction. If I just go through the pages, I'll just flip through and hit some of the areas. From year to year, these often start looking the same. We explain to them what our design review process is for historic resources and how we issue permits. We talk about our Section 106 policies. We tell them who you guys are. We include your resumes that you give us when you start at the commission. So if you ever want to update your resumes, some of the ones we're using are older, but that's not really an issue. We talk about your professional qualifications. We give attendance records. We submit the minutes for each of the meetings that we have during the course of the calendar year. The one section that I think I may have missed, and looking at it now, I did miss Commissioner Vidor's, although I swear I put it in here. But for the training, I've been trying to keep track of your trainings when you tell me about them, but I know I have not been perfect about that. So if there's anything here that you did during this period from October to September that was a preservation-related training, for example, Commissioner Vidor went to the Los Angeles Conservancy's HPOZ conference. We will include that here. And it's a requirement, and we've talked about this in years past, it's a requirement that you all do trainings. We will try to get some more webinars that you can sit through or look at tapes of the webinars, and then that counts. And basically, it's just anything that will keep you up to date with current practice is the most important thing. We talk about the South Glendale historic context because it was completed during this period. We include Brockmont Park as our new historic district, which they were already familiar with. We talk about the public education that we do, that either staff attends and participates in, or that we conduct for the public. So we had several things, mostly in May last year during Preservation Month, but a few others that I think shows that we're not neglecting our work in the community. Then we have a few pages that don't relate to us. And then at the end, we kind of summarize our programs and establish some goals. And the goals tend to be floating from year to year. We give them updates on where we are on certain things. They ask us, at one point, I can't remember, what trainings the commissioners would most benefit from. I always put Secretary of the Interior standards training in there. If you guys have any other thoughts, we could certainly add whatever you feel is kind of a gap and that you'd like to, improve on or learn more about.
I saw that, and I think that's a good one.
So with that, I leave it up to your comments, corrections, additions, whatever else.
I'm not sure I have the date, remember the date, but wasn't 141 Cedar landmarked in this year, or was that later?
No, that was in the calendar year 2014.
But not in the CLG year?
Yeah,
I see.
because that was all of our designations were December last year.
Oh, okay.
So everything got held till December. So I'm going to add Commissioner Vidor, your Los Angeles Conservancy training.
Jay, a
Yeah.
question. For example, Pasadena Heritage, City of Pasadena, they do their bungalow or their preservation bungalow month, whatever it is, in October. If commissioners were to attend tours or something like that, does that qualify under CLG standards for
Generally,
education?
tours don't count.
Okay.
It's usually a workshop, conference, so something a little more focused on a subject than looking at pretty buildings. But
Right.
even though you learn a lot, of course, from those tours.
A
But
lot?
Yeah, but their Craftsman Week or weekend also sometimes includes some more focused kind of paid seminars or
yeah,
something like
if,
that
for
could
example,
qualify.
if I know Pasadena Heritage offers this, and also Glendale Historical, often a repair your wood windows workshop. If you did something like that, where you're actually getting some focused education, that would definitely count.
So I did not know we have a designated environmental planner.
Eric Kraus is our principal planner, but he has, for years, been our focal point for environmental review issues, CEQA issues,
Did
Section
not know
106
that.
issues.
Thank you.
And all-around good guy.
No, I mean, I'm sure it It's quite a bit of work to put this together. Yeah, thank you for doing it. And I was
Thank Eileen. Eileen Babachani gives us a lot of.
you, Eileen.
She has stepped out.
stepped out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Eileen.
We could still give her thanks. So.
And I'm sure it sounds like your panel discussion at the Brand with the Architectural Society was probably
That
very interesting.
That was great. We had a full house. It was like very surprising because my group, the Society of Architectural Historians, has done events in Glendale before, and we've had attendance, but not amazing. So we were all really gratified by that, and the panel was great. We had all the players. Did any of you attend? I don't know.
To be honest, I wasn't aware of it. Otherwise,
that the
I would have
one-
attended. I would
Is
have
that the one that
liked
happened
to attend.
when the library opened?
Wouldn't that be great? It was during the period when there were a lot of.
Me too.
So let us, let us know if you do anything else like that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but it sounds. I'm glad you had a great attendance.
Yeah, it was nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good with that.
Do you count that as training for you, that you gave that?
It's more public education because it was about an important Glendale resource, and we had members of the community. Some were clearly, I think, a lot of people from Glendale, but we had a lot of people from outside. So it's kind of just spreading the word about what the city's doing, what our commitment to preservation is, what great resources we have, like the Brand Library. So it was, it was all around. It was a nice presentation. So.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much. Okay, 8 on the agenda is Planning Division updates and informational briefings. 8A is 2014 urine review and Mills Act condition fulfillment.
Okay, this is a tradition we started a few years ago just to refresh everyone's memory about some of the lovely properties that have been designated over the course of the year and some of the other work that we're doing, and then especially focusing on the Mills Act and how people have fulfilled their conditions, let you have a chance to see when you ask someone to do something what it really looks like, which is nice. Here we have 1141 North Central at the corner of Spencer, which had that very memorable rotunda kind of entry. This is our nice Buff and Hensman post and beam in Glen Oaks Canyon on Bywood. This is, of course, our wonderful bungalow in the Glendale Heritage Garden that Commissioner Vidor nominated successfully. This is Casey Stengel's house on Grandview. So this was an exciting nomination to have come through. And then this is the wonderful 1890-ish house down on Wilson, not far from where we're sitting. So those were the 5 properties that were designated. As I mentioned, we had 2 others that were considered, and we'll be looking at those in the near future for various reasons. Brockmont Park was designated during the course of 2014, so it was a multi-year process to get to that designation, but it successfully reached its conclusion with designation, and it wasn't without controversy because this is also where 1555 Valley View is located. The commission voted not to recommend not to approve the demolition of the property. The owners took it to council on appeal, and council overturned the commission's decision. So that house will be demolished. The good part of that, if there is one, is that this was such an unusual case. This was someone caught in the cusp of designation and not designation. We were uncertain ourselves at staff level about aspects of the pipeline process. So we ultimately tried to be as fair as possible as we could with the applicant and with the neighbors in the process. I don't see this kind of thing happening very often, and there may be applications for demolition in historic districts in the future, but it will probably be more clear-cut. It wouldn't have some of these gray area issues. But we never know what's going to happen. Here's our Civic Center walking tour, which was it a raging success? It was nice.
It was a success.
I thought so.
We all enjoyed it.
We all enjoyed it.
So, and here's Commissioner Vartanian and Greg Grammer from the Historical Society with the plaque that we had we debuted, that sat in the sun for a long time, if you remember, so it was
I was
really
going to
hot.
say, it actually looks nice kind of draped in that, what looks like red velvet, but the reason it's there is because that plaque was scorching after sitting in the sun.
Is that the Muni Services Building plaque?
Yeah.
Oh,
And hopefully
okay.
you guys have noticed that it's installed downstairs in the lobby.
Oh, I haven't. I need to look.
Okay, when you could go outside
I haven't
tonight.
been traipsing around here for a while.
It's when you're
sorry.
entering from the plaza, it's on the left side, you'll see it. It looks really
Great,
nice. The
yeah.
color, I was glad we went with the silver plaque instead of a bronze plaque because it works better with the building, and glad we did. And then we had some really, really nice professional displays that Eileen helped us put together. And so I think this is a success, and we still have lots of the brochures, and it's something that can be done in the future. There's nothing to date it, so.
Absolutely. That's a good thing.
That was our big Preservation Month event for 2014. And unless you have any questions or anything I miss, any major things I missed there, I'll go through the Mills Act.
Sure.
Basically, this is in no special order. If you remember, this is the house that had this is 1345 Cordova. It had the very interesting kind of spiraling stairway and ramp approach to take you up to the entrance to the house. And the commission had noticed some plaster damage and water infiltration. So the owner has had these walls in this walkway area restuccoed. And it looks crisp and nice, and hopefully hasn't failed since these pictures were taken. It looks like a tough, it's all below grade. So, inevitably
Yeah.
this is going to be a maintenance issue over time, but it definitely looks good after the work was done. Here's an example, and you can see on the upper left that, there's going to be ongoing patching over the years, I'm sure. 1455 Royal Boulevard is the McCall's house, if you recall. And this was the house where the owners volunteered, basically, to put the roof back on the garage. We granted several extensions on this. It turned out to be a very big project. And the work is now done and looks great. This just was, as you sort of see in the left-hand photo, was just kind of a cropped-off flat garage. And based on the original drawings, we knew that this was the original condition, so this was a good restoration project. At the front, the commission had also asked to have these shutters returned to the house that were visible in some of the renderings. This was designed by Merrill Baird as a competition for McCall's Magazine, and so the shutters are, I think, really successful addition to the house. The owners also put a new roof on the house, which wasn't a condition, but they put real slate on the roof, which is a really wonderful thing to bring back to the city. At 1220 Cortez, there were a series of projects at this property, and the final one was the addition of the kind of the new cabinet at the pool house. And again, this was one where there was extensions granted because the work was being performed in good faith and on an ongoing basis, and everything is completed there. I think last year you saw some of the other work, including the restoration of a fountain where a terracotta fish spits out water. Beautiful property. This is kind of one of our big. We had a lot of conditions on this property, and again, this took longer than the period that the commission gives. I don't know that you want to start thinking about expanding some of the time periods, or if you're comfortable with staff just if we're comfortable working with someone. So, but it seems to be a recurring theme that people aren't always able to complete things within the time period. This is the central storage building on Central, obviously, and the windows had all been painted over. The paint was removed from the windows. A lot of the glass had to be replaced during that process. So this looks much better from all vantage points around the building. Here's some of the side windows that were unpainted or replaced. There was a gap with some ugly foam that just got sprayed into it. They placed a metal cover over the gap that is not perfect, but it does the trick, and I think it meets what the commission was hoping to see. There was an ugly kind of grill placed over an air conditioning unit. It was important to the owner that air conditioning remain in that location. So we worked with them and just found a simple metal louver solution that, again, it's not the most beautiful solution, but it works and it's much better.
Better.
It's a big improvement, I think.
Yeah.
There were some infilled windows at the side that had been infilled some years earlier. They were unpainted at the time. The commission asked for those to be painted. There were some inappropriate carriage house, kind of carriage light fixtures up above the door. We worked with the applicant or the owner to, I thought they would want lights there, so we were hoping to find lights that could replace those that would be more appropriate to the building. Ultimately, they decided to just remove the lights, which we thought was an acceptable solution since we didn't know exactly what had been there before. So in the future, someone could bring lights back if they wanted. And then finally, this is a condition that the Preservation Commission did not impose. This came from the City Council hearing. One of the City Council members questioned why this storefront window had this vertical divider in it and I said that's not original, and the Commission reviewed it and didn't say anything, and so Council ultimately asked to have a single pane window for the two storefront windows on the street, and I think that's a nice improvement. And finally, there was a sign was installed. I think there had been some other sign up there at the time that you reviewed it. The whole building was painted, and then a new banner sign was attached to the wall, which we thought was appropriate. So we have that. 2990 Edgewick was the really nice post and beam that had this great monitor running the entire length of the house, bringing light to the inside. This brick wall was noted at the hearing as having some problems. The commission gave them the opportunity to rebuild it or to repair it and then landscape the area. They chose the latter, and you can see their plaque prominently displayed very proudly, so we thought that was successful. This is the farmhouse from 1890 that was remodeled at some point into a colonial revival style house that was designated under criterion 5 rather than 3 because we didn't know enough about the history of its architectural changes. But they gave us a termite report, which came out okay. I think they ended up tenting the house. And they did a substantial amount of wood repair and then painted the house. And so here's before and after of the steps. Here's the side of the house. And here's that little outbuilding that you might remember. So again, they kept this decorative fascia board here, and everything looks crisp and nice, so we thought this was a success. 1440 Maryland, I believe this work is done. This is the kind of the Mediterranean Revival House that had some exposed cinder block walls around the pool, so you have to have those stuccoed. If you watched Saturday Night Live 40th Reunion and saw Paul McCartney, the person we're working with here was playing guitar, so he's been busy lately, so I wasn't able to talk to him to see if I could get a photo of the work, but I'm pretty sure it's done. So we'll confirm that. It was pretty straightforward, and it was not on the house. It was kind of on later editions anyways, but I think that should be good. And finally, for the work that was done, this was a rooftop air conditioning unit on Royal Boulevard on a designated house at 1471 Royal. While it doesn't meet our current zoning, it's an existing unit, and we did not ask them to remove it, though in the future it's likely when this thing goes away we'll have to come up with a different solution. The commission asked that it be painted out. We couldn't find the before picture, but it was painted to kind of come closer to the color of the roof. This is the backside, so you don't see this from the street. So this is the house you recently approved in addition to the rear. So, for what it's worth, they painted it, and it doesn't make it disappear, but there it is. And then we have 3 properties that are currently extended from their initial deadlines, so I just wanted to share that with you. 221 West Kenneth is that house Colonial View that you don't see from the street, but has the great gate as you enter, and it's really grand colonial revival house. I've met with the owners and their contractor a couple of times, and we've talked a lot. When I went to the site, there's a lot of work there, and I pretty much accepted the fact that this is not going to be done as quickly as possible. I have June 2015 here. If it extended to December of 2015, as long as I know they're working on it, I'm comfortable with that, and they've been in contact What I haven't been able to find is someone who can repair the faux bois, that concrete that looks like wood. And I've reached out to a bunch of people, and I'm getting people who say, "Oh, I do that, sure." And then it turns out people who do fake wood grain also call that faux bois. So I'm not sure. Hopefully, we'll find someone for that, because it's really beautiful. When I went back to it, it reminded me of what a cool feature that is. It's pretty unique. 611 Cumberland Road is the Tudor revival on Cumberland. That was kind of a late 1950 Tudor revival. The architect has shown me a proposal for the garage door. They have the original drawings. The initial proposal I had to say no to. I said try to find a door that comes back close, if not matching the original door. So that's what they're working on right now. So I gave them a short extension. And then 630 West Kenneth is the house that I mentioned earlier. So they have until March 2015 and may appear before you next month. We'll see how that works out. And that's everything.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
Nice report, yeah.
yeah, it's nice to see that the conditions you impose actually have meaning and really improve the properties. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good year. Another good year. Okay, that was the last item on our agenda. So with that, I think we'll adjourn. And see you next month.
What time is it?
Meeting adjourned.
5:55.